have to be learning a lot, and God doesn't have to be teaching me all during the week ahead of time. My husband even said, no, God just really hammers it to you when you're going to preach. And I said, oh no, this is going to be my easy week. It's on relationships. We're women. We're good at this. Yeah. That was up until I started preparing for the sermon. I went to Lone Star Restaurant for my birthday with my mom. And lo and behold, the person who sat next to us for the 45-minute wait for dinner was someone I had not thought about or remembered at all until the kids sat down and I looked up. And there he was, the person from work who had made me so angry for 6 consecutive months. That I attempted to talk to, but I really didn't think he was going to change. I didn't expect him to. I just thought he'd be himself for a few more months. So I just kind of let things slide. And so when we saw him in the restaurant, I sat silent, avoiding eye contact at all costs. You know what I'm talking about. You know, there are people in your lives like that. But then I started getting this little feeling. Something was not going so well with my plan. Because the longer we sat there and waited for the table, the more I realized that there was something that I wasn't doing right. So when I got home, I picked up my Bible, and I looked at this verse. It's Matthew 18:21 to 35. I'm going to take a little creative license so nobody's stealing me today. Okay. So then Peter came to him and asked, Lord, how often must I forgive someone who sins against me? 7 times? That's a lot of times. That should be good, right? No, Jesus replied, 70 times 7. For this reason, the kingdom of heaven can be compared to a king who decided to bring his accounts up to date with servants who had borrowed money from him. I was doing well with this part. Accountants, they're nice people. No one gets in too much trouble. You know, for the most part, there are those few that get white-collar crimes, but most of the time accountants are really nice people. Must be a good servant. Okay, so let's keep on looking at the verse. In the process, one of his debtors was brought in who owed him millions of dollars. He couldn't pay. So the king ordered that he, his wife, and his children be sold along with everything that he owned so that the debt could be paid. But the man fell to his knees begging the king, oh, sir, be patient with me and I will pay it all. Then the king was filled with pity and released him and forgave his debt. I was doing well. Jesus forgives my sins. I sin a lot, so that works out well for me. But then came the next part of the verse. Not as comfortable. So the man left, very excited that he had gotten his debt forgiven, and he ran into a fellow servant who owed him a few $1,000s. He grabbed him by the throat and demanded instant payment. His fellow servant fell down before him and begged for a little more time. Be patient and I will pay it, he pleaded. But his creditor wouldn't wait. He had the man arrested and jailed until the debt could be paid in full. When some of the other servants saw this, however, they were very upset. They went to the king, and they told him what had happened. The king called in the man who he had forgiven his debt and said, You evil servant! I forgave you a tremendous debt because you pleaded with me. Shouldn't you have mercy on your fellow servant, just as I had mercy on you? Then the angry king sent the man away until he could pay every penny. Then Jesus continues, That's what my heavenly Father will do to you if you refuse to forgive your brothers and sisters in your heart. Let me tell you, that hit me like a rock. After all that time, seeing that man in that restaurant brought up all those feelings of anger and resentment for all the things that he had done for all those months. It would be horrible to get to the end of life and realize that I had not done the very few simple things that Jesus asks us to do. Not that they're simple on our own, granted. but with him, all things are possible. All of this, of course, made me really start to think and dwell on, is there anything else I need to get rid of? Is there anything else that I need to forgive somebody for? And that made me think about my childhood, because you know all the psychotherapists say, think about your childhood, think about your childhood. But my childhood was a little different than most. This is a sign at the front of the neighborhood where we lived. It's Highland Country Estates. It's a little airport out on 52. My dad still lives there today. Oh, I'm tripping on cords. Sorry. And what all the mothers always loved to hear when I invited a friend over was that I had to warn them ahead of time that the planes have the right of way. Now, you think that might sound a little strange, but if it comes down to you driving down the road and the plane's coming at you, knowing that you should pull off is a good thing. It's just not what you want to come to without having warned them. You flip to the next slide for me. This is a PT-17 Stearman. I think I got it right. It is the restoration project my dad took on while I was in middle school. He finished it by the time I was in 7th or 8th grade. Took several years. He got one that, since it was built in 1942 and it's made of fabric and wood, you can imagine what it looked like. But this plane was special because it was used to train others. And God really started to talk to me about the Stearman in particular over the last few weeks, and about planes, and about how they're a lot like our relationships. John 10:10a says that the devil comes to steal and kill and destroy. And that's what time did to that plane. Do you see the arrow up there? That's what was left of the plane you saw before. That was the metal part. There are some leg things that are not on there, but for the most part, that was what was left. There's no more wood, there's no more fabric. When the devil is done with our relationships, and you know sin has really gotten in there and twisted things really well, looks a lot like that. Just an empty shell compared to what it once was. Not used to build people up, not used to encourage or trust, or to show Jesus. Doesn't even remind anybody of a plane. If I didn't have an arrow, it would be very difficult to see. But the Apostle Paul reminds us, as a fellowship of believers, what we should do when the devil comes to steal and kill and destroy. He was in jail, of course, for a very, very long time. And while he was in jail, he wrote a letter to the Philippians. And in the entire letter, he says many things. But he takes an entire paragraph to talk to these two people. And this is what it says in Philippians 4:2-3. I ask Euodia and Syntyche to agree in the Lord. I ask you, faithful friend, to help